So in this video, I'm going to show you how I plumb my water hose into my tank. This is very critical to plumb it so that way we don't lose a lot of flow in through different things. So I always plumb it through a filter. This is a nice filter. It's going to catch a lot of crap. It's very small. That's going to allow it to go through, and that way we don't have to worry about our pumps going bad. I could just hook it up to the other side of the pump and the tank just to my pressure washer, but I actually like doing it before it ever gets into the garden hose and in there because, I am using the other pumps. I'm using 12 volt. I'm using other things from my water tank. So I want that water to be clean. I'm using water for my pressure washing hose, from my downstream injector. So I always want clean water going into here. And you would be surprised how much garbage gets through this here, or would get through if you didn't have this into that tank without this here. So that is why I always like to place mine right after the reel. So some things I'm going to use is a 3/4 inch filter. It is just a poly strainer. It works great. It's actually an 880 mesh, so very little is going to get through there. Again, my manifold going into this hose reel, I didn't buy it, so it is what it is. It's 1/2 inch. So I'm actually going to have to do a 1/2 inch reducer, 3/4 to 1/2 inch. And there is right here on here, there is an arrow showing which way the water is going. So we want to make sure that the water is coming out of there, and it's going to come in here, and it's going to go through this way. So we're going to put this right in here. And then I'm going to use a 90. And the reason why I'm going to use a 90 is just the way my setup is so then that way it's not going to sit on the ground. It'll actually hold it up. And then we'll use a little short extension here. Now, with all that being said, I will need a hose clamp here to go on here, and then I will also use some blue goo to put on there. Again, all of the fittings are down in the description, so that way if you want to order whatever you want to order, you can just go there, bam, 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 and it will be done. So I already showed you how to do the float valve, and all I did was just shove my hose onto the float valve onto this tank up here. So that line is actually coming down the frame rail here, and it's going to come up here. The reason why I put this hose reel toward the back instead of up here is you got the wheel well there, and you're not having to bend over the wheel well and all that kind of stuff. It's bad enough you got to bend over to get it here, but if it was over the wheel well, then you're trying to bend over the wheel well and everything else. So we're going to get started here. Again, I'm Jason Guyman with PressureWashHelp.com. Help you grow your business, be successful, and to change your life. So first thing we're going to do is put some blue goo on here, and this is going to go into that filter housing. I always like to make sure I got enough so that way I don't have water leaks. The last thing I want to do is have water leaks. Again, we're going to make sure that the flow is going to come from there and make sure our flow is right. So we'll get it started here. We'll don't feel like it's, and try not to cross thread this stuff because it will cross thread pretty easy. The next thing I'm gonna do one side of this here. I'm gonna put some blue goo on there like so, and then what I'll do is once I get it tight, I will wipe the excess off so we're not getting this stuff all over our hands, all over our clothes, everything like that. Again, this is something that we do not need to crank down really tight. We want to get it tight, but not super tight. Super tight crack stuff. And we don't want to crack it. So again, I'm going to get it tight, but I'm not going to get it so tight that it's going to crack everything. So I'll just get it nice and snug. These filters are fairly cheap. They're only about 20 bucks, $25, not very expensive at all. And then the next thing I'll do is put some blue goo on my 90 here. Get it all good and blue gooed up so it'll hold good. And then I'm going to just Tighten this one up. And again, we don't need these killer tight. We get them killer tight, it will crack it. Guarantee it. So we'll get it right there where I think I'm going to need it. Get me a nice little rag here. Wipe off any extra, so that way I'm not getting it on my clothes. I hate getting this stuff on my clothes. It's like anti-seize. Once you get it one spot, it just freaking keeps going. So again, I'm going to wipe off both of those. Make sure it's nice and clean there. Alright, so I'm going to check here and see if I got to, I might have to take off, yep, I'm going to have to take the filter housing off because it's not going to spin. So I'll take that off. And I'll put me some blue goo on this one. Put me a little goo on there. Make sure it's good and lubricated up so it'll seal good. Again, where we're out a little bit, we want to make sure that we're not cross-threading it, which that's what I just did right there. That's not good. We don't want cross-thread. Cross-threading is bad. All right, so I'm right there. I'm going to go see if I can get one more out of it. Hopefully I don't crack it out of that last one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put my filter housing back on, like so. Nice and snug. And I'm going to see how much hose I got here, if I need to cut any off. I might cut just a little bit off of it. I do like these cutters here. They work really good. They work excellent. Makes a perfect cut. They don't jag it too bad. All that stuff. They work really good. They work for hose and they work for PVC. But you can see just how easy that was to cut that. Perfectly straight. Alright, so this is a 3/4 inch hose right here. This here you need to heat up. So I'm going to get my heat gun. So I'm going to have to put a bigger hose clamp on here. So I'm going to go ahead and slide my hose clamp down on here. That way I'll be ready to go. That's where I want to put that hose clamp so it don't get me. We got to reach down in there. So we're going to put our hose clamp on there. Next thing I always do, I'll need to do is take a heat gun and heat this up. This hose, if you don't heat it up, it is hard as a brick. As we have a guy at our firehouse. He's got special needs and he comes to our firehouse. And that's how he says, hard as a brick. And this hose is hard as a brick. If you cannot, you don't want to get it too hot or you'll melt it. So we don't want to melt it. We just want to get it nice and warm so it's flexible. And that way that'll hose will slide right up on that barb there. Otherwise we won't get it all the way up and then it's a pain in the neck. The other thing I try to do is lubricate it a little bit. Put a little spin on it. You can put a little oil on it. Oil can actually damage it though, so you gotta be careful with oil. Again, we're just gonna slide this right up on there like so. Try not to break fittings doing this. And again, can be very tough. All right, so we got it on there. We're gonna bring our hose clamp up here. I got a nice little 5/16 socket right here. And we'll take this. Remember, if we're using a 3/8 ratchet, don't crank down on these too tight, or you will strip out the gears. So I always try to just ratchet here. Don't get out on the end. Just ratchet right here. Make sure we're tight. Should be good there. And there we go. And there we go. Now we've added a filter onto our hose reel here, and that way you get a lot of dirt. You'd be surprised how much dirt comes in through this right here. There's a lot of dirt that can come through this hose reel just because we didn't filter it. So we definitely want to make sure it's good and filtered when we're going into our tank. We don't want it to be non-filtered. Otherwise, it's going to get in our tank, and then it will also get in our Hudson float valve. I've actually had grass all over the Hudson float valve, and it wouldn't flow at all because it had so much grass in it. So that is something that you want to make sure that we don't have it unfiltered. So this is really important to make sure it's unfiltered. So that is something that is very important, that we have filtered water going into our water tank. And if we have it going in there, we should be good, so we don't need a filter coming out of it. Some people do put a filter coming out of our water tank. I usually don't, because I just don't want that restriction on my water pump. What happens if we get crap in there? What'll happen is your gun will feel like a machine gun, because if a piece of dirt gets in there, or that piece of dirt gets into, makes it through the pump and comes out the other end and under the underloader valve, and that can be an issue. So again, this is just how to plumb a water hose up, so that way we can be ready to go and start our pressure washing business and be successful.